Rev up your engines!
Stephen Brown says, Scotty, my 2012 Acura TSX 4-cylinder makes a grinding noise on cold startup. I think it might be a common VTC actuator. Have you heard of this? And is it serious? Oh, yeah, I hear it. I see it all the time. And I do hear it in the cars when people bring them over. Yeah, their variable valve timing system is very complex on a Honda. And a lot of times when you start them up, they make a noise. Sometimes it's the actuator itself. As it starts spinning and it needs to get lubricated with oil. Because, of course, when you stop a car, what happens to the oil? It all drains down to the bottom. So there's some bare metal. Something like 90% of the wear inside your engine occurs on startup. And on those, the variable time actuators are on the top of the engine. They're the last things to get oil. So they do wear. Now, as long as it stops after a few seconds and it runs okay, you can often live with it, because to fix it, it can easily cost you well over $1,000, sometimes $2,000 or $3,000 if you got to replace those assemblies. So you might just want to live with it. I got a lot of customers live with it. I'd be kind of mad if I had one that was 8 years old and did it. 18, okay, but 8, shouldn't be doing that. But a lot of those Acuras do. And like I say, if it goes away after a second or two, you might just live with the stupid thing. But make sure you got clean oil and you change it a lot, because dirty oil will cause that too. It'll clog up the little holes in the actuators, and it will make noise, and it will be wearing because there's no oil in it. Escape Mike 1 asks, Scotty, love your daily videos. Is there a lot less maintenance electric vehicles than standard vehicles? Well, yeah, if they're well made, of course that's true, because electric vehicles are pretty much like a little toy car you had when you were a kid. A battery and a motor. Pretty simple, you know? There's no transmission, there's a battery, and the battery runs the wheels. Usually the motors are right at the wheels, so they don't have any transmissions. At least most of them don't have transmissions. It is a much simpler vehicle. But of course, the modern ones are all computer controlled. And all that crap can break. Look at the Teslas, they're breaking all the time. Software issues, chip issues, things shorting out, start on fire issues. So even though theoretically they're simple, they can become a royal pain. And let's face it, most mechanics don't know how to work on electric cars. And don't want to learn how to work on them either, because the 200 to 400 volts can kill people. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to mess around with that. You know, it's less than 1% of the vehicles on the road are electric vehicles. So a lot of guys don't even want to mess around with it unless it gets a lot higher, because it doesn't make business sense to spend tens of thousands of dollars on equipment that you're not going to use all that often, which you need for electric cars. Tokes Goki says, how do you feel about a Honda Civic Del Sol? Well-made vehicles, but they don't make them anymore. They haven't made them for quite some time. They weren't such a big sale because, you know, they weren't the Civic. They were a little fancier, but they weren't nice like a Prelude. So they're kind of in between, and they never really became ultra popular because they weren't cheap and they weren't the expensive. They were kind of in between. They could run a really long time. I had customers with them, got hundreds of thousands of miles. They got good gas mileage. I personally think they're kind of ugly looking cars. They didn't float my boat stylistically speaking, but mechanically, especially if you got a standard transmission, they could run absolutely forever. They just stopped making them because they were kind of, like I say, in between, and they weren't big money makers, so Honda stopped making them. DRO7MD says, please comment on the 2019 VW Golf All-Track. Planning on buying one? Don't then. That's my comment. Volkswagens are endless money pits. You're going to pay a lot of money, and it's going to turn into a money pit. Now, in Europe, they sell a lot more of them. More people are used to fixing them. The ones they buy are made in Germany. The ones sold in the United States, a lot of them aren't made in Germany. Quality control is worse, and there are plastic garbage wagons as they age. The plastic cracks. The electronics break down. They're not like the Volkswagens of the past. And you're talking an all-track. That's a Porsche Audi system. Volkswagen owns Porsche and Audi. You put that kind of high-tech into a Volkswagen, you're just asking for trouble when they age. They're almost impossible to fix. Cost a fortune. And they have no resale value as they age. Nobody wants to buy them used. So unless you're an absolute Volkswagen fanatic and you don't care about throwing money away, don't buy one of those things. EJRO1 says, Scotty, winter versus all-season tires driving in the winter. Depends on where you are. Now, my mother, she's 92. She still drives cars in Buffalo. She got Toyota Corolla, and she's got all-season tires, never put snow tires on anymore. Now, we always used to put snow tires on the cars because my father ran a garage, sold tires. We had them lying all over the place. And all our cars back in the day were rear-wheel drive, and you really need snow tires with rear-wheel drive. One of the reasons they went to front-wheel drive was because front-wheel drive, your car is being pulled, not pushed. pushed. And cars handle much better in the snow when they're being pulled rather than they're being pushed. They don't slip all over the place. So a lot of times you don't need snow tires. But, it depends where you are, too. You live out in the country and the sticks and the roads are crappy and there's tons of snow, you're probably going to need snow tires. You live in an area like in the Rocky Mountains. I've been driving through there in the winter, and when you rent a car, they say you're either going to have to rent a car and get chains, put chains on, or rent an all-wheel drive vehicle. There, you have to have snow tires and probably get chains, too. But for most people in cities and stuff, they plow them good enough. If you got a front-wheel drive vehicle, the all-season tires are fine. And if you got an all-wheel drive vehicle, you certainly are fine with all-season tires. You don't need to put snow tires on it then. Brandon Agaro says, Scotty, how can you tell for sure if an engine is seized? Well, I got a video on that. Getting an old car running that's set for years, you can watch that. But what it basically comes down to is all the fronts of the engines have a big crank pulley that runs all the fan belts, right? Well, most of them in the middle have a giant bolt that holds it in. Get a long extension bar and a socket that fits on that bolt that's on the end of the crank. Start turning it, and if you can turn it 380 degrees and then keep turning it and it doesn't bind, the engine's not seized. If you either can't turn it at all, or you can turn it a little bit and then it clunks and clunks, then the engine's seized and locked up. It's a real easy test. All you need is an extension bar and a socket that fits on that. You can go to a place like AutoZone, get that stuff for $25 and pull on it and see what happens. Edmund Pascal says, hey Scotty, are you interested in motorsports like Formula One? That's kind of funny. One time, Shell flew me to a Formula One race in Austin, Texas, and I was totally disappointed because everything was under wraps with sheets on them. They wouldn't explain anything. It was their secret. They didn't want you to know. So I didn't get to interview the engineers that designed them. They were told they can't tell me the information on stuff, and what they were running in the gasoline and oil, that was a secret, trade secret. They wouldn't tell me. So I didn't learn anything. Well, then, you're basically sitting there and you're watching cars go around in a weird circle and slow down, speed up. I actually found it rather boring. Thank goodness I didn't pay anything for it. They put me in a hotel room, so that was okay. But I found it incredibly boring. I mean, being in one of those things, I got to drive one once. Boy, it's exciting driving them. It's kind of like soccer. It's a European thing, not an American thing, Formula One. Americans like drag races. How fast can they go in NASCAR where they're smashing into each other all the time? But Formula One, that's more a European thing like soccer. And soccer, I played soccer in Canada when I went to school there. And it's a very exciting game to play. But watching it is like watching paint dry. It is so freaking boring. And they hardly ever score. Formula One, that's really not my cup of tea. If you're doing it, I've been to those old dirt tracks where they're driving around in circles in cars, and you can only go 65 miles an hour. But man, you're on a dirt track going 65 in a circle. You're being pushed. You got to be strong to do that. It's exciting. But watching it, that's boring too. Dakota Alexander says, Scotty, can all-wheel drive system be damaged with different tire size from stock tires? Yes, it can. You want to stick with all-wheel drive, all 4 tires, the stock size tires, and truthfully, if any one of them wears out, you got to replace all 4 in an all-wheel drive system because the computer's comparing them all the time. And if it sees that one isn't traveling the same speed as the other, it'll start using a 4-wheel drive system to speed up or slow down a certain tires. And you know what that does? That creates friction inside the all-wheel drive system and they wear out. I've seen people with Audis that were dumb enough not to buy all 4 tires. Their all-wheel drive system went out and then it cost them like $8,000 to fix it. So you buy an all-wheel drive vehicle, be prepared to buy 4 tires at a time and stick to the stock tires. Mike says, what problems might I have if I change my battery in my 2016 Tacoma, radio, computer, etc.? When you do change the battery in any Toyota, modern ones, it'll generally idle poorly for a while because it has to reset the idle. The idle in all modern cars, and Toyotas are very sensitive about this, acclimates itself to your driving style. You take the battery out, put it back on, it goes back to the factory setting, and it's got to relearn how you drive. Now, generally, just driving it around for a day or 2 or 3, it'll go right back to normal, and it'll start idling fine. Now, if you have an anti-theft radio, make sure you got the code for the anti-theft radio and all that stuff. But if you want to bypass all that crap in the first place, just get yourself one of those memory savers. It's a device that just plugs into the OBD port, and then the other end of the device you hook up to a small 12-volt battery. And some of them even come with small 12-volt batteries in them. And then when you disconnect the battery, that keeps the memory alive. Hence it's called Keep Memory Alive tool. That's the one thing about cars. The names of stuff almost always tell you exactly what they do. Places like AutoZone sell them. You can get them on eBay, and all over the place. And it's really a smart idea if you're ever disconnecting the battery or replacing the battery today to plug one of those in, because then you don't have to deal with any of that crap, and the idle will stay exactly where it was in the first place. But it won't hurt anything in the Tacoma by itself. It'll just make it idle a little bit weird for a day or two. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.